am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Jason Crandell, an internationally known yoga instructor who teaches on power yoga, anatomical precision, and mindfulness teachings. He is named one of the teachers shaping the future of yoga by Yoga Journal and has been an in-demand teacher at conferences around the world for more than a decade. Jason is considered a teacher's teacher, where he has taught countless teacher training faculties, leads trainings globally, and regularly presents teacher training content at esteemed conferences. In my interview with Jason, we talk about his journey early on from being a philosopher to becoming a yoga teacher and what it takes to really create success when you have the drive and desire to go after it. Thank you for listening to this next episode of Breaking Beliefs podcast. I'm Amy Vetter and I'm here with Jason Crandell. And Jason, do you want to give a little background on yourself?
I'm Jason. I grew up in Ohio. I grew up in Toledo, but I've been in San Francisco for really truly the second half of my life. So the second 22 and a half years. And I've been teaching yoga pretty much that whole time.
Yeah. So maybe you can give us a little background of just where you began. So growing up, I'm Ohioan, so fellow, you lived in what city in Ohio?
I lived in Toledo. I grew up in Toledo, and then I went to school in Southwest Ohio.
Okay. So what did you go to school for?
Philosophy. I have a philosophy degree.
Okay. So what made you want to go into that degree in the first place?
I had always been a really intellectually curious person. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, at that phase of my life, there wasn't any career that I was oriented towards yet. Like I really always thought that I wanted to be an educator of some sort. And so philosophy was just genuinely the subject matter that I was most interested in.
Yeah. So what, were you doing yoga at that time or when did you?
No, my yoga practice started during my last semester in college.
Okay.
So but it had no direct connection to my program as such.
So how did you start in yoga?
Literally, it was a kinesiology class. My girlfriend at the time was adamant that I had to take a kinesiology class to graduate. Mm-hmm. And my girlfriend at the time was adamant that was what we were going to take. So I did it.
Yeah. And so did you like it?
No, I didn't like it. No, not even a little bit. I mean, I always felt good afterwards, but I really didn't culturally identify with what I thought the yoga scene was going to be like. Mm-hmm. And then I had played demanding physical sports my whole life. You know, I had played hockey in Detroit and skateboarded pretty much both of those things since the time I was a little kid. And so I just wasn't inclined towards something that I thought was going to be kind of, hippie dippy.
Yeah. So where did you get those thoughts about it being hippie dippy? Was it cultural?
I truly don't know. You know, I mean, I grew up skateboarding, so always in the counterculture, and subcultures often don't like other subcultures.
Right.
So like the skateboarding world, like the people that we just thought were the worst were like hippie world, like Grateful Dead listening people. You know what I mean? Right. And so I just kind of, I just had that kind of, that's what I thought. And I was partially wrong.
Yeah. Well, and I get it. I'm a CPA by background, so it took me a while to get it. I tried it a few times and I was like, Not for me.
Yeah, a little non-specific for a CPA type, I would guess.
Exactly. So what made you continue on, or when did you do it again that got you involved with it?
I just, the bottom line, to be honest with you, is even though I didn't really identify with it, it worked. I just felt better and more grounded, and it just made me feel good. I mean, that's the bottom line. It just made me feel good. So I never stopped.
Yeah.
And then I became a teacher only a few years after I started. It was kind of a long set of events, but the bottom line is that my teacher at the time asked me to take over his intro to Ashtanga classes. So I took over these classes. And that's how it was done for a lot of generations. I was kind of the last generation of teachers who usually didn't start with a training. We were asked to teach at the behest of our teacher.
Right. So with your philosophy degree, were you doing that as your job? Were you an educator?
No.
So what did you end up doing after college?
That yoga. I mean, this was all, it all happened very quickly. I mean, I had like some random jobs. Like I worked at yoga studios like right away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I worked in a warehouse loading and unloading trucks and some stuff, but I was in a master's program for international relations.
Oh.
Right. And at that point I had just kind of decided that I didn't really want to be an academic, and I wanted to do something. I was just kind of searching, and my teacher at the time asked, and that was it.
And what was your parents' careers?
My parents and my grandparents both have histories of owning small businesses, just like little, small, random businesses.
Yeah. So how did they feel about the decisions you were making at that time? Were they supportive?
They were really supportive. That's cool. I mean, how they felt, I don't know.
Yeah.
Were they supportive? Yes.
Yeah.
It's very Western, I don't know how they felt.
Yeah. But I think that's an important lesson too, because, when you're seeking your path.
They weren't so to it that they try to steer me a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah, which is that takes a lot, right? Especially when you're not real sure which direction you're going at that point in your life.
For sure.
Yeah. So you took over Ashtanga teaching, and then what happened?
I did. Say that again, Amy.
What happened from there?
Oh, God, a lot. I mean, pretty shortly after, around that time, I was also starting to take classes outside of the Ashtanga world. I was starting to take these, I was starting to study with Rodney Yee. Mm-hmm. And that world, at that time, Rodney was the most influential yoga teacher, at least in the country. I won't irritate people by saying the world, but in the country by a landslide. There weren't other really well-known teachers, and Rodney was in the East Bay, and we connected personally. I really got along with him really well, and it was I started taking class with him, and it was kind of like the world of yoga really opened up in a very different way, a much more complete way that I had experienced from the Ashtanga world. Mm-hmm. And that was it. So I slowly migrated away from the Ashtanga world. I did a 1,000-hour program with Rodney and Richard Rosen and Mary Piffard and Patricia Sullivan and some other amazing.
Wow.
That's Garrett right. Garrett Feuerstein was part of that. Ramanand Patel was part of that. I mean, I can't, at that time, there just isn't, I can't imagine a better faculty, and stuff like that just doesn't exist anymore.
No.
So that was a time and era where, ironically, most of the yoga industry in some ways hadn't developed yet. Mm-hmm. And yet the training was across the board so much more complete. There weren't these short little 2 or 500 hour programs. Right. Like those didn't exist. Those were too short. no one in that era would have considered those to be sufficient, so they didn't exist.
So when you were shifted into the role of teaching a class versus taking it, like going back to when you took over for your Ashtanga teacher, what did you learn for yourself as you shifted into that role? Because it's very different.
I just learned that I didn't know what I was doing. You know, that teaching the discipline was a totally different thing from practicing the discipline. It was just an entirely different thing, you know? And so, but I was always a good communicator. You know, like I joke with my students all the time because my students see me, they see the real me, but they see me doing the thing that I'm actually by far the best at.
Right.
And like, there's so many things in my life I'm average to bad at, but you know what I mean? But I've been a good natural communicator, and I'm good at explaining things to people. And I see the big picture. I see macro level concepts pretty easily. And so I feel like I have the natural attributes to be a teacher. So all I really understood at that point when I started teaching was like, okay, I have all the attributes, but I need some guidance. Because teaching and practicing are so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's really important for most people as they shift roles, whether it's in business or as a yoga teacher, you know, or any kind of educator. It's a lot different to explain something than to personally go through it yourself. And a lot of times we become experts in what we do, but when we get into the next best role for us, then we have to start learning all over again because it breaks down what you knew.
Right.
Yeah. So once you, you got into this training with Rodney and all these other amazing teachers, where did you go from there?
I mean, I did what pretty much every yoga teacher does, which is I just taught a lot of classes for a really long time. Mm-hmm. You know, so for over 10 years, I taught 15 classes a week. I taught a dozen privates most weeks. I had second jobs. I mean, I think that's another thing too. It's like, no one in that generation expected that was going to be a single or a complete living. You know what I mean?
Right.
No one, because there wasn't a model for it. Rodney was really the only model of having kind of this higher level commercial success. So I don't think really many people expected that, you know?
Right.
The other thing that we didn't have is we didn't have the crazy making that occurs via social media. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have to see what we perceived as other people's amazing success life.
Right.
Which is, I mean, it's just smoke and mirrors, man. It's an unbelievable amount of smoke and mirrors. You want to see people who have a lot of followers and almost zero actual business. Look at Instagram.
Right.
Because those things, social media is just not converting for people to actual student bases. But that's beside the point. So I just taught a ton for a really long period of time, but I was also in a good position. I started teaching classes for Yoga Journal's staff because their office at that time was in Berkeley, and the owner at that time knew me from Rodney. He was a student of Rodney, so so I started teaching 3 days a week at Yoga Journals, teaching their staff, and that just turned into writing. That turned into a commercial presence for me that was significant.
Well, and I think both of those points you make are really important. Is one, we might look at images on social media or marketing and start coming at ourselves with self-talk when we don't actually know the real story. And
we don't know anything.
And second, just all the things that you need to do and give in order to be able to get to certain positions. Like, you know, I'm sure a lot of the stuff you were doing for Yoga Journal, not everything gets paid at that stage. You know, you're trying to break in and I mean, make connections.
I say this to people in my trainings all the time. If you have decided that you want to be a yoga teacher to avoid work, this is not for you.
Right.
You're not going to work less than your lawyer, partner, friend. You're not. Not if you want to really make a living at this. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And also, you have to be the entrepreneur. You have to put yourself in a position to develop your business. No one's going to come. No, there's no support structure. No one's going to come, and say, here's the path. You have to figure a lot out and be willing to take a lot of risks.
Yeah, and there's not one path that works for everybody, right?
No.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting too, because I just recently took a training with you, but one of the things, I'm a yoga studio owner. One of the things you brought up is just how hard it is to have these businesses.
Oh God.
And I've been a speaker at some of these yoga conferences with entrepreneurs where some of them go in because they really like to teach, and then they think they can create their own schedule. But just like shifting from student to teacher to entrepreneur, you're at everybody else's whim of what they need, and you have to be open to listening so you can shift.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing as so you made this leap of getting known through Yoga Journal and nationally known as an instructor. How did you create success in that though? Like, you can get those opportunities, but what do you think the things are that you did that broke through for you?
I mean, the online content, working for Yoga Glow for a long time, because that's where people actually practice with you. So if you compare something like that to Instagram, people don't practice with Instagram. They don't practice via Instagram. So they might learn something, they might gain insight, they might be motivated by seeing someone's pose. They're not actually practicing with that person. So where teacher-student relationships are formed is when they're engaged in something. So the digital content, where people are actually practicing with me online via Yoga Glow, that's by far the biggest thing. That, and then my wife's podcast, Yogaland, because that has such a massive reach, and it's not this like short form quick thing. Like, you have to invest your time to listen to it, just like listeners of this podcast. So when people invest more of their time to establish a relationship, they're more likely to actually do a workshop or do a training. So I would say it's those two main things, Yoga Glow and then Yogaland, where they get exposure to me. But again, it's not like a photograph of me doing something. It's me teaching them,
Right.
And so that develops the relationship, that develops the bond. I mean, I have a lot of online yoga students who are real students. You know what I mean? Like real steady students. I have people tell me all the time when they meet me at workshops, like, I take your class 3 days a week. I have for the last 4 years. Like, none of my students at home do that.
Yeah.
So those are like real relationships. Those are real teacher-student relationships. I mean, I say to people all the time that introduce themselves to me, so like, hi, my name's John. I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. You have a really great practice. And they're like, you're the only person I've ever practiced with. Like, so those are real, those are distance learning things. But I think it's a combination of those. And then also, like, I've just had a relentless travel schedule for a long time. And I go back to a lot of the same places. So year over year, I make those connections and develop students in those locations.
Yeah. And I think the bottom line with all of that is relationships, right?
Yeah.
Connection.
There's one more thing, which is there's actual content there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Which is like, I am a really avid and prolific content creator.
Yeah.
So, right, I'm always working to develop different ways of teaching, improve techniques, improve sequencing, studying with doctors of physical therapy to look at injury management. So I'm extremely invested in quality development. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and effort that there aren't that many people at a high level doing. And so it's that connection and that content over time.
So what do you think drives you to want to do that?
It's exactly the word you use. It's just a drive.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just have a really strong, I'm just super compelled to do it. You know, I think it's like a chef or, you know, whatever, like, it's not even I'm not going to say I don't like it, but I'm not going to tell you like, oh my God, I'm having so much joy.
Right.
I'm saying like, it's a really just strong urge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's an expression of who I am and what I'm really interested in. And I enjoy it, but it's less joy and it's more, just drive to create
And be better.
Yeah.
Always wanting to keep taking it to the next level.
Yeah, and I think I denied that for a long time. I think for my first decade and a half or so in yoga, I thought like I shouldn't be so aspirational, you know, blah blah blah. But like I grew up playing competitive sports. Like I want to be really good at what I do because I'm good at it. You know what I mean? Like again, like I train in a martial art, I go rock climbing, like I do all these things that I am genuinely not good at. You know what I mean? Like
right.
for the amount of time and effort that I put in, I'm fine, but I have no real inherent talent towards those things, but I really enjoy them, so I do
right.
it. But I think with teaching and developing curriculum, like I just have an inherent talent and I'm driven to do that well. And I was kind of in denial of that for a long time.
That's so interesting too, you know, to have, because of yoga philosophy, to have that conflict inside of you of like, that you are aspirational, you do have expectations of yourself, you know?
Yeah, and I think I just kind of misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, it's really being okay with who you are.
Totally.
You know, and which feeds into non-judgment, you know, but rather than judging the fact that you do have that drive and do want to do better and try to hold back for other people's purposes, you go to it.
Right.
Yeah. So what are the things that you think, from your learning over the times, from the change in your belief systems, when you go to these other studios, when you teach other students, what are the things that you want to leave behind with those people that are important to you?
I think two things stand up for me. Well, three things. Like, and let's say three things starting least important.
Okay.
The least important, but what I do want to pass along is information. Like information about the topic, information about the subject, because the reality is that the vast majority of yoga teachers, including myself for a long period of my career, are underprepared with regards to having like a full suite of information about yoga, anatomy, sequencing, like there are so many layers to this topic. And when you do the math, right, and again, this isn't, I don't want to be negative. I started teaching yoga with zero training, okay,
Mm-hmm.
because my teacher asked me. But you look at a 200-hour training and you do the math, that equals one 15-hour semester at college. When you do, right, so 500 is a year and half a semester. So at our highest level, we have like 60% of an associate's degree.
Right.
And yet we're expected to know about injuries. We're expected to know about human relationships. We're expected to know about playlists. You know what I mean? There's so many things.
Right.
And it's just like, we are woefully underprepared for the reality of what our job is asking us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. That's how it is. Like I am a living example of you can continue to learn and grow and get a lot of on the job training and eventually be pretty well informed. But so I think that one thing, that bottom line thing is information. And then on top of that is our understanding the concepts that underscore the information so that people develop critical thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final thing is independent thinking, because we can take a whole step back, and I don't want to this gets complicated, but I think if you are a yoga teacher or a teacher of anything, and you are not teaching critical thinking skills by helping people understand concepts, and if you're not encouraging independent thinking, then not only are you not helping students as much as you could, but you may be putting students to some degree at emotional risk. When people like start to believe you, but they don't understand why you're saying what you're saying, and you aren't trying to help them think independently, I see a lot of potential error there.
Well, and I think that's true in any job as a leader.
Totally.
If you try to micromanage or, not let people figure out their path of learning, to get to an answer, and then you keep doing their work for them, you end up creating the same, thing in business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I have so little experience outside of the yoga world, but I can imagine, like, of course, this translates everywhere.
Yeah. So what are, you've got a demanding life as far as travel and so forth, and plus all the research and everything else you do. What are the things that, as you've pivoted and changed in your career, how do you think you've made changes that have affected the people around you, whether that be people you work with, whether that be your personal life? What are some things that you've had to pivot over time to make that all work?
That's tough. I don't see moments in my life where I made a pivot. I don't see a moment where I went like from A to B. I can trace like the whole evolution of my thinking, and certainly there are kind of critical eras where I'm doing A, and then I'm doing like A+1 and then A+2. So I'm kind of slow in those tasks.
Incremental.
Yeah, I'm a very super incremental. Like, I don't like abruptness. I don't like quick or intense change. I kind of have an aversion to that. And I'm also like, I'm pretty conservative when it comes to my beliefs. I don't have conservative belief systems, but I'm conservative in that I am reluctant to change.
Yeah.
So I don't change quickly or freely or easily. Like, I have to be convinced of something for a long period of time to kind of make those changes or roll that out. But I think to me, the thing that stands out for me as it relates to others, just sticking with my professional life, is I've become a lot better at teaching teachers. All the little things, like I know so many of where our gaps are in our community, and I'm just much better now at being able to directly address and communicate to those gaps.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I like to end with some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So you pick a category. It's either family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Oh, man. I'm like thinking either money or health.
Okay. Which?
All right. What's that?
Which one?
Health.
Health. Okay. So things or actions that I don't have that I want with my health.
Oh, that I don't have that I want with my health. Oh, man. And something that I can actually, this is not very rapid fire, that I can have or I wish I had.
Either.
Like changes that I could actually make. So here's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I can't see for a damn. Like right? But I can't change that.
Right.
But there's other things that I could probably change.
Yeah. Okay. So what would that be?
Less injuries from training.
Really?
Yeah, from training jiu-jitsu, not from yoga.
Yeah, because I was gonna say that's your whole thing.
it's really easy to not hurt yourself doing yoga.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So things or actions that I do have that I want, that you want to keep as far as your health.
Oh, I would say, I'm going to say 3. My cardio endurance, my strength to weight ratio, and my range of motion.
Okay. Things or actions that I don't have that I don't want as far as my health.
That I don't have. I don't know. I don't believe that I have any underlying chronic disease, and I hope that it maintains that way.
Yeah. Okay. Last one. So things or actions that I do have that I don't want as far as my health.
That I do have that I don't want. Oh, I need a little bit better LDL to HDL ratio. It's not that bad, but it could be better.
Okay. You can tell you are a very medically trained.
I just had a panel done. I had a panel like a month ago.
Yeah.
And it's good, but that's
you can make it better. Yeah.
Total cholesterol is good, but
yeah,
we could have an improved ratio.
So
more avocado, less, I don't know, carnitas.
Butter. Yeah. So just with us ending, is there anything that you want people to take away from our conversation today that is important for you as far as your message to people around your journey?
I feel like maybe this came up when I was just teaching with you the other day. This is something that's been kind of coming up for me. On some level, it's so simple, but I think that it fits really well within the narrative of your podcast, which is just to remind people that they can continue to learn new things. You know, they can continue to learn and grow and evolve. And when you don't think you can learn, and when you don't think you can grow, and when you don't think you can evolve, your life gets really small, you know? And I think about that a lot. 1, because I'm a teacher. 2, because I'm middle-aged. So there's a part of me that just wants to stick within like my little known sphere. Like I'm already on that cusp of being like, get off my lawn, blah, 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 you know? But also having a kid and just wanting her to be willing to expose herself to a lot of things, and to know that, you know, like, hey man, I'm way bigger and stronger than she is now. So of course rock climbing is easier for me, but if she is steady with this in 3 years, she'll destroy me in 3 years. But she doesn't know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing of people of all ages. It's like, you know, are you going to start in your mid 40s and become like a professional rock climber? No. But can you continue to learn and grow and be inspired by newness? Yes, you can. And I'd say along with that is like, it's really okay to be lousy at stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be really good to enjoy certain things. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, I love that message. And it's so important that we get stagnant in our careers or things that we're doing, or even just outside hobbies. And we have to remember to keep expanding ourselves and widening our horizons.
Absolutely.
Keep growing. Keeps us young, at least internally.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And now time for our mindful moments of this episode with Jason. There were a few areas that I think are important for us to step back and pause on. And first off was his term of being intellectually curious. And I know all of us have these different paths in our career, and how we begin is really interesting. And I think it's just giving ourselves space to take those journeys in our careers and our lives. And that can happen at any time in our life. It doesn't necessarily just happen when we're in college or starting out in our careers. But that term intellectually curious really struck me as something that is where we want to have that our entire life, that it's not something that we have once and really trying to figure out where we're going. It's times in our lives where we continue to pause, be curious, and allow ourselves to experiment and learn about what our interests are and where we could actually integrate that into our lives rather than trying to control what is happening in our lives, and really finding those paths and being that observer to see what could actually happen for you. And I think he's a great example of that, once he started this yoga journey, that he really went with the flow of the opportunities that came his way, didn't reject those opportunities, even when someone came to him to teach a class that he had never taught before and wasn't trained as an instructor. But taking on those opportunities and making those shifts is really where our growth starts to happen, and we start to understand what is really important about that next level or next opportunity that we want to take on, that we have to be open to learning, coming back to being intellectually curious. The other thing that I thought was really important, and whether you're in the yoga world or entrepreneurial world or in your career and feel competitive with other people, that social media doesn't always tell the real story of what's happening in people's lives or businesses and so forth. And if we want to make sure that we're not getting stressed out or thinking that we don't have as much success as another person, it's important for us to filter out what isn't serving us, because we can think that it's fine for us to see those images and so forth. But if it's creating an emotional response internally or getting in the way of you staying positive and taking stock of all the opportunity you have without worrying what somebody else does, then it's really important you figure out a way to curb it. Because when he was talking about his journey to becoming successful in what he does, he noted that it was good that there wasn't social media, so he didn't feel bad or think that he wasn't doing as well as he was doing. And I think we have to go back to that mindset of prior to social media. How did we actually control our emotions and not worry what somebody else was doing? And maybe we worried, but we couldn't see it. So it's important that we figure out how to adjust our lives so that we are not creating those emotional responses for ourselves. The other thing that was really important, and this applies whether you're in the yoga profession or any profession, is that if you want to make a living, you have to work hard. That there is no quick way to success. And a lot of the work to get to success is giving our time for free. It's really what we need to do in order to get exposure or to meet people or to network. And it's giving in order to get. A lot of people that open businesses expect the phone to ring, expect immediate success, because the effort that you've actually got to put into a business or put into a career in order to create the success is not something that they want to really put forward. And that is fine. The part that's not fine is not being honest with yourself on which side of the fence you're on. If you are good at maintaining and good where you are, then don't try to or hurt yourself or harm yourself by thinking you should have more success than you do. If you're fine with the amount of effort that you're putting in and the result that you're getting, then be okay with where you are. But if you want more success, then it does take that extra work. It does take developing relationships in new ways and finding where your path is, which isn't necessarily the path that is somebody else's, that you might see from someone that you look up to or on social media and so forth. So really being open to the work that you have to do in order to create success. The other thing that I think was really important moving from that to relationships is that, working on a business or a career, it's all about developing relationships. It's not a photograph on social media. And if what you do is on social media, it's how you create an engagement with that audience. And depending on the audience, that could be offline, that could be independently one-on-one, that could be publicly in a group. But where you're actually making an emotional impact for people, where they feel connected to you and they want to follow you to other things that you are doing because they are receiving the value that they hope by being around you. So it's not just about showing off and maybe ego-driven things that can happen. It's about how you engage and how you give back in order to create that really sticky relationship. And his points about learning apply no matter what, is that we have to get a deeper understanding of a topic in order to truly understand what we are doing. It's not just about the text. It's not about memorizing. It's about understanding the underlying concepts of what we do, whether that's our profession, whether that's something in our personal life, but it's going that layer deeper so that we can internalize that information and become what he calls an independent thinker. And that is so important, that we not only train ourselves to be independent thinkers, but train the people around us to be independent thinkers, that they're not always going to ask you for the answer, that you have imparted enough information and education that they are able to find a way to not just regurgitate what you say, but actually understand it from a deeper level and be able to get creative with the information as well and get to maybe an even better answer. So as we go through change, I think it's important, Jason's point as we wrap up this episode, that we make change incrementally, that we take the time to learn and we learn the pros and cons and so forth. Rather than making rapid fire changes, take those little steps so that you can be convinced of any path that you are going to go, and you're not just regurgitating information that you were told or a belief system that you have because of somebody else. Instead, you're taking those moments to truly understand why you are saying what you are saying so that you can provide value to the people around you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.